Georgia spring practice has started, and we got G-Day right around the corner, so we're going to talk about what we're looking forward to this spring. Welcome to the Nitro College Football Show, college football from a Georgia point of view. I'm Burl.
And I'm Street.
And like I said, we're going to talk about what we're looking forward to most out of Georgia spring practice. We'll touch a little bit on the Carson Beck situation, just because it's interesting. There's some interesting talk going around about spring games, and we'll see where it goes from there. But before we dive in, we just want to thank you for watching today, spending some time with us. If you could, hit that like button on this video and hit that subscribe button. Takes 2 seconds, helps us out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and also leave a comment. We love to hear what the people who are watching our show have to say, and we will most certainly write you back if you leave us a comment. So please do. Like I said, it really does help the show.
Awesome. All right, Georgia spring practice. What are you looking forward to most out of spring practice?
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing a lot about what's going on with the quarterback position, how the offensive line is shaking out, just kind of the overall feels of the program headed into next year. Obviously, 2024 was not what a lot of people expected it was going to be. Georgia won the SEC, but it kind of felt like they were worse than the year before, and obviously worse than the 2 years before that. So I just kind of want to hear where the program's going. But earlier today, Kirby Smart actually had a press conference where he talked about the first week of practice. And based on Kirby's comments today, maybe things ain't so good up there in Athens. Kirby seemed visually frustrated today. He started out talking about that the players that they've got right now don't really know how to be coached hard, which is not something you typically hear out of Georgia. Georgia is usually known as a place where they coach hard. And Kirby said, look, we usually have players who, when they make mistakes and we give them critiques, they usually want to hear that. But I don't know about this crop of kids. He said he feels like they're soft, that they're kind of getting offended almost. And
was he talking about the freshmen and the transfers, or?
I mean, he was talking about the freshmen, I think, but he was kind of talking about the team as a whole. And that could come with the fact that, as we see in this changing landscape of college football, that you don't have as many seniors and upperclassmen as you used to. You used to have guys who'd been in the program for a couple of years. Yes, you have transfers come in, but they're new to the program, so they're not used to, how the coaches coach and how they talk and how things like that. And a place like Georgia, where they've had coaching stability, another topic we're going to talk about tonight, I think it's just tough for the Georgia coaches to get used to that. And it's a change. Kirby did also talk a little bit about the freshmen. He said that the freshmen are not in shape. He said that they are struggling to get through some of their reps in practice, and so that they're going to have to get in shape. He said it's not necessarily their fault. They haven't been pushed this hard before in high school. And because so many kids are enrolling early now that's the norm.
What's this remind you of? Only the greatest coach of all time, Nick Saban.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Nick Saban press conference.
Yeah, true. So like I said, it just seemed like Kirby was a little bit frustrated. We'll talk a little bit more about some of his comments on spring games as well. But it was some interesting stuff from him today.
Well, he knows it better than any of us. So Georgia fans, trust in Kirby. And on that note, let's talk about this quarterback battle. I'm excited about this because we got a lot of dudes in the quarterback room. I think it's, clearly Gunnar Stockton has a leg up on everybody, but we keep hearing about Ryan Puglisi right on his heels, and we've got other guys there. So all that being said, it's definitely Gunnar Stockton's job to lose, but I'm really looking forward to that competition and seeing how that plays out over the course of the spring and the fall.
Kirby brought up that he said that, yes, it is going to be a competition between Stockton and Puglisi, but then he kind of downplayed Puglisi a little bit, saying he's got a way to go, his exact words. The other two guys we have on campus are both freshmen. Ryan Montgomery's coming in, but he's coming off an ACL that he hurt his last year. So he's there for spring practice. I'm not sure how much he's involved in. The other guy is a local kid, Hezekiah Milner, who is seen more as a project quarterback. So it is going to be those two guys, I think, really competing for the job. And you know, it is Stockton's job to lose, I think. He came in last year, he played as well as you could have expected in the playoff game and in the end of the SEC championship game. But I think a full year of spring practice with him under helm will really help him, the trust he has, and also the fact that the receiving room is going to be far improved, I think will help him. But yeah, it's an interesting situation. You know, one of the things that some people have talked about here lately is that as Georgia fans, we always kind of want to see him to want what's next. And we never really want to have what's right in front of us. And it's kind of been that way for a long time, if you think about it. Even going back when Aaron Murray was the quarterback, you know, people were like, oh, well, we should have started Mettenberger, you know, when he left. And then Aaron Murray was here for a long time. And then we had Jacob Eason, and he went down, and all of a sudden Jake Fromm came in, and everybody wanted Jake Fromm, and Eason ran out of town. And then it was Justin Fields, and then it was, you know, on down through Stetson, and we don't want Stetson. We want JT Daniels, and then, you know, just on down the line. So Georgia fans have always had this problem with never wanting what they have. And I think this year is different because it's a new situation. The two quarterbacks we have are relatively inexperienced. We were in a good position where we had Stetson for those years, and we had Carson Beck, who was ready, and then he returned as a starter. So it's definitely a different feel this year with this quarterback competition. I still expect Stockton to win the job in the end.
Yeah, you know, you look at Gunner, he's been in the program for a lot of years. He's a redshirt junior. So he's been in the system. He knows the playbook backwards, forward, sideways, you know. So I've got a lot of faith and confidence in that because, you know, Kirby puts a lot of value on the quarterback knowing how to get the team in the right play, right? Like not having to rely on looking at the sideline, you know, every time something happens. And that's always been a staple of a Georgia offense, is a quarterback who can make those calls at the line and get people lined up correctly without too much hand holding. And I think he's definitely going to have that leg up on that. The only way I could really see Puglisi really winning the job outright is just if he just comes in and has just ridiculous arm talent, then the great spring that is just head and shoulders above. But, you know, if Kirby's saying he's got a long way to go, I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's certainly a competition. Just looking ahead to the future, obviously Georgia still is looking ahead to the future. They're going really, really hard right now after Jared Curtis, who's the number one quarterback in the class of 2026. He committed to Georgia last year and then backed off his commitment, has kind of seen his way around the country, but it's definitely down to Georgia and Oregon at this point. He was in Eugene earlier, and then he came and spent like 3 or 4 days in Athens last week. And supposedly Georgia made a move. They're offering a fairly hefty NIL package. Rumors were around $3 million, so that's definitely more than what Georgia has offered in the past. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring him in to come in. I expect they're probably pitching him on, hey, you know, the quarterback position is unsettled right now. It's going to be that way next year. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, the quarterback competition is definitely an interesting part of spring for Georgia.
It'd be nice to land that number one quarterback, because past few years it seems like we've either had the number one quarterback committed, and then, you know, last year with Dylan Raiola, who was it the year before? I'm sure there was somebody there before that flipped or, you know, went somewhere else.
Curtis was committed and then he decommitted, and that has been a while ago. But there was a couple of kids, you know, we were right in it for Julian Sayin, who's probably going to be the starter at Ohio State this year.
Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah.
You know, we were in the competition for him as well. He ended up committing to Bama and then transferred after spring practice. So didn't even really stay at Bama very long. But
Yeah, that'd be a nice pickup to add to the collection of top players at their positions that Georgia's been able to to get in the recruiting ranks.
Right. So another topic for spring for Georgia, a position where we haven't really had the top talent, is the wide receivers room, which we all know in 2024 was a serious letdown. Led the country in drops, really made things kind of hard for Georgia to stay consistent on offense. But they've certainly gotten a boost with the offseason additions of Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch. And then at the beginning of spring practice last week, the news that Colby Young has been fully reinstated to the team. He's back, he's on the team, and he will be part of Georgia in 2025. So you really are looking at a much stronger wide receiver room. You've got Noah Thomas coming in from Texas A&M. He had 39 catches for 570 yards and 8 touchdowns. Zachariah Branch coming from USC, 47 catches, 503 yards, only 1 touchdown. But when he was a freshman All-American as a returner, so he brings that with him as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience in those two, because Noah Thomas, he's a incoming senior, and Branch is a junior. So it's not like, where they were freshmen, didn't get some playing time, and then decided to transfer. So those are some big gets for Georgia this offseason. I'm really excited about those 2 transfers in particular, just because, like you said, our wide receiver room was really bad last year, and this year it's looking promising between those 2. And we've got some pretty good returning receivers. And it's really interested to see how Nitro Tuggle plays out. Our favorite receiver, obviously. And, hopefully we get some more out of London Humphreys. That'd be nice to see that step up a little bit. And then we've got the, super freshman CJ Wiley that is already making an impact in early practices.
Yeah, him and Taylor as well, 5-star freshman. This receiving room looks so much better than it did at this point last year. You've got a lot of experience between the transfers. Dylan Bell, London Humphreys. You've got Young back, and then of course Tuggle and White, who are going to be sophomores. So it really looks like you've got a much stronger room. If they do half as better on the drops front as they did last year, then the Georgia offense will be set up to be much more successful than it was in 2024. The other piece of the offense that really needs to kind of take focus this spring is the running game. The Georgia running game in 2024 was bad. As a matter of fact, it was the worst it's been since Kirby has been at Georgia. They were 102nd in the country in rushing last year. Like, Kirby's worst year other than that was 2020, when they were 56th in the country. The best year was 2017, when you had, Sony and Nick and DeAndre Swift back there. But a Georgia team finishing in the 100s in rushing, it's just something you didn't think you'd hear. And, it was a result of a lot of things. The O-line had a lot of injuries. It was inconsistent. They underperformed. The running back room was certainly decimated by injuries. ETN missed a lot of games. Branson Robinson and Roderick Robinson have barely played in 2 years. And so a lot of that fell to Nate Frazier, who was a true freshman. So we'll see. This next year, it's going to be, it's a lot of those same guys coming back. ETN decided to go pro, and they lost Chroma, who was their top prospect, on signing day to Florida State. He got a big NIL deal and flipped his commitment. So they only brought in 1 freshman, Bo Walker. Now, I have been hearing good things about him at practice, that he's been pretty impressive, that Kirby even mentioned him today, that he's a very coachable athlete. So he was talking about guys being not coachable. He said Bo Walker was very coachable. But it really is going to come down to the health of Branson Robinson and Roderick Robinson, because I think Nate Frazier can be fantastic, but he's going to need help back there. The other piece of that story, obviously, is the offensive line. Last year, Georgia lost 4 starters off the offensive line, but because they struggled so much and because a lot of them were hurt last year, maybe that's a good thing.
I'm really looking forward to the run game this upcoming year. And Here's the reasons why. Nate Frazier, we know he's awesome. I'm really excited about Bo Walker. He was a huge get. I think he committed like a couple of years ago, actually. And he's got like the greatest name for a running back ever. He like the two best running backs of all time, or two of the, I think they're the best outside of Barry Sanders. But Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker, you can't go wrong with that. So great name for that position. That would be a really cool 1-2 punch, because I'm not going to count on the Robinson brothers. I know they're not brothers, but I mean, it'd be nice to get them back, but you can't count on it. They've been hurt the whole time they've been at Georgia, so it is what it is. But outside of the running backs, you've got some really big guys on the O-line. Even though we lost, four starters this year, that doesn't even bother me because our line was pretty garbage in 2024. So in my mind, it could only get better because I got my rose-colored glasses on right now.
I mean, Kirby talked a little bit about it today, though. We did lose 4 starters, but we do have 4 guys coming back who have started. Drew Bobo had to play games last year. Monroe Freeling had to start games last year. Micah Morris had to start games last year. And Ernest Green was our starter at left tackle, and he played hurt all year last year, and you could see it. I think he had a hurt arm, and you could see it in the games where he just wasn't himself. And he didn't play well last year, ended up losing his starting job. So a healthy Ernest Green, Monroe Freeling played bad at the end of the year, but up until that point had played really well. I think there's some signs of things going in the right direction. There's a kid by the name of Daniel Calhoun who was a freshman last year. I saw him play in high school. He's insanely huge. He's probably in that competition for that remaining starting spot on the line. Like I said, it'll be interesting because they struggled so much last year that maybe it just needed a change. Hopefully Georgia can run the ball this year because that would certainly take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback. But also keep in mind that Gunnar Stockton's a little more mobile than Carson Beck was, and he's going to run a little bit. So maybe that helps out there too as well. One other factor that you need to consider when you talk about the running game next year is because Georgia did bolster up its wide receiving crew, it may allow Dylan Bell to sneak back into that backfield. He was so good there in 2023 when Georgia needed it that I think if he's given the chance to be a little bit more of that Swiss Army knife, he doesn't have to be a number one receiver because, let's be honest, this year he didn't play like a number one receiver.
No, nor should he be considered a number one receiver. That was never supposed to be his role. He was supposed to be like that Deebo Samuel type where you do kind of put him everywhere. You just get him the ball as many times as you can, and he's going to make special plays happen.
Yeah. So, if his touches increase in the backfield, I like the chance to use him there. Also, we got a transfer that's gone a little bit under the radar. His younger brother, Micah, also transferred into Georgia and is also going to be taking some carries in the running back room. So it's supposed to be kind of a similar player to him. So that could be another one to watch for. But I am excited about the running game just because I think it's time for Georgia to get back to what they used to be, not really to what we saw last year.
They need to be moving people. I mean, if you're going to have a successful running game, like you got to be pushing people around. And one guy I'm going to be on the lookout for is Jazair Jackson. He 6'10", 348.
Yeah, they said he's the largest football player in the history of Georgia football.
That's a massive human being right there.
Now he's a project because I don't think he played much football until like the end of high school. He was a basketball player, converted over, so he's definitely a project.
Super athletic.
Yeah, the fact that he played last year, they were talking about the fact that he played last year as a true freshman when he has relatively very little experience, tells you all you need to know. That if he continues to develop by the time he's a senior, that size, if he if he develops, then you've got something there.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's one name that I'm going to be watching for. It's going to help the running game. Some other things that will help the running game is our tight end room is pretty much intact. We lost the kid out of Stanford to what did he go pro? He declared for the draft.
He'll probably get drafted. Ben Urosic. He'll be a late round draft pick because when he was at Stanford, he was a really good receiving tight end. And then this last year at Georgia, he was actually a good blocking tight end. So he's shown a little bit of both. He didn't have a huge role in Georgia's offense last year, but I think he's got a chance to be drafted, kind of like some similar guys out of Georgia that got drafted late. John Fitzpatrick, who played in the league a couple years, Charlie Warner, who's been around in the league for 5 or 6 years now, Trey McKitty, a couple of those guys that didn't have huge, crazy pass receiving numbers, but worked in the system at Georgia that prepared them for the NFL and were late, 7th round picks, but ended up making careers out of that. So he's probably got a good shot at that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's a loaded tight end room. You got Oscar Delp, who, in my opinion, is the best ball carrier out of all of the pass catchers. He's a tough runner, and he can get open in space and make some special things happen. So hopefully that connection between him and Gunnar Stockton will pay dividends this upcoming year. And then you got Lawson Lucky, who is a great pass catcher. They need to find more ways to get him the ball. So between those two, and then throw in Ellis Williams, that will be something to watch for, to see if how quickly he gets on the field.
And Ellis Williams will probably project a little bit more as a receiver, from what I've seen. You might actually see Ethan Barber get on the field before Ellis Williams. He's a little bit more on the blocking side. They both are great pass catchers. If you look up anything from the state of Georgia last year, both of them are prolific pass catchers. So the fact that Georgia got 2 of them, I mean, once again, states that, Hartley is the best tight end coach in the country, and he continues to recruit the best in the country. But yeah, the tight end room certainly is exciting next year. Don't forget that we still have, sorry, go ahead.
Elias Williams, 6'7". He's 6'7", 235.
Right. It's another Darnell Washington situation.
Yeah, exactly. I hope he's number 0. That'd be great. Okay, we got to talk about this. It's pretty funny. The curious case of Carson Beck.
Poor Carson Beck. Poor Carson Beck. I've never felt so bad for a guy with, how many millions of dollars in Lamborghinis and model girlfriends.
I don't feel bad for him at all. He's made his bed, man. He made it from, transferring out when he could have came back to a national title contender. But I don't blame him. Getting $10 million, that's not a bad deal. And he went down there originally for his girlfriend, but apparently he has fumbled some Snapchats.
Yeah, apparently he got caught talking to other girls, and that set off the Cavender twin, and Carson Beck is back on the singles market in Miami.
Yep. Not only that, but a few weeks before, he gets his Lambo stolen.
Yeah, it was 2 cars. It was a Lambo and something else, right? He had 2 cars stolen.
2 cars. Yeah.
And then this week, there were reports that there were a couple of NFL draft analysis that said that it was a true red flag that Carson Beck, when he decided to not go pro, decided to transfer from Georgia. And that there's rumblings in the NFL kind of, going on around scouts and stuff that's a real red flag for him next year. So he may, he took the short-term money and the fame to go to Miami, but it really may end up costing him in the long run. Yeah,
and I can totally see why that would be a red flag, because it's not like the Cam Ward situation last year. Cam Ward was going from Washington State to Miami. So that was an upgrade. Carson Beck going from Georgia to Miami, that's not an upgrade. Well, I mean, let's
No,
be
it was
real.
just about money.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, the Carson Beck story is not over. He's still going to make his money this year. He could still have a great year for Miami and be a first round draft pick. That's all still in front of him. It's just kind of funny that he's gone down there and just all kinds of dramas happen.
Certainly, it's certainly interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. I'm ready to roll with Gunner.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word out of Athens is that team is not necessarily missing Carson's ego. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was really interesting when right after he got hurt during the Texas game, Gunner goes in and the team is just super hype. I mean, they were all for Gunner, and it was wild to see that type of reaction and mentality because honestly, we hadn't seen it the whole season. I mean, when we were at a game and it felt like, man, this team doesn't have heart.
Right. They didn't react that way around Carson like they did around Stetson, or they did to Stockton. So I think it was just maybe it was a clash of personalities or whatever it was, but I think it's for the best that he's not in Athens this year. He's had some luck, but we wish him the best and hope it works out for him.
Yeah, I am looking forward to having a more mobile quarterback because Georgia's offense is at its best when it has a run threat at quarterback. And you can even look at last season. Carson Beck's best game probably was the Tennessee game, and he ran the ball quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it just works better that way.
So up next, there's news about spring games. Obviously, Burl, you talked a little bit about the drama going on with spring games a few weeks ago, and it ain't stopped. The drama just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Georgia is supposedly going to have G-Day this year, though Kirby had stated the other day that he hopes to have G-Day. He's not sure if he can commit to it yet. They asked him to clarify it a little bit today in his press conference. He said that he still hopes to. He said that they are 1 or 2 injuries away from not being able to. And if that happens, then they'll have to go to something more like a controlled scrimmage. He did say today that the game is not going to be on television, which I find very interesting. People are obviously disappointed about that. When asked about it, Kirby said that it was, it had to do with scheduling and timing, but I don't think that's true because the last few years, the spring game has been on, has been on demand. It's not been on live TV anyway.
I think it makes all the sense in the world because you're trying to retain your talent that you have signed. And it's kind of like, the NFL preseason. You got players trying to make the roster, but they get cut. The benefit that they have is they were able to put some tape out there, get some playing time on tape. And that's all the spring game really is at this point in this world of unlimited transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what you've heard. That's what some of the coaches say, that it's all about the transfer portal. It's all about not, giving pictures of plays to other teams to let them come in and poach their guys that might be on the fence because there is another transfer window after spring practice. So it's interesting. Like I said, it's kind of being handled 3 ways, at least this year, by teams. Some teams are straight up already have canceled their spring games. They're not doing anything at all. No open practices with the fans, nothing. Some schools are doing kind of modified where they're doing like fan events where they have an open practice. And then some schools are still having spring games. We thought Georgia was one of those until recently. They still may have a G-Day. I mean, Kirby still says he's committed to having G-Day, but I think this is another case of Kirby being Kirby. He would love nothing more than to not have anyone see his practices ever. That's just the type of person that he is. So the interesting thing is what becomes of spring games. A few years ago, spring games were all the rage. You
Mm-hmm.
turned on TV in spring, and there were spring games on everywhere, on ESPN, ESPN2, SEC channel, everywhere. There were games from all across the country.
That was a huge recruiting tool to be able to say, like, hey, we're so good, our spring game is televised. That was a big deal. And we had 93K day. Kirby said, hey, let's pack out the stadium for spring game.
And over the last few years, that's kind of dwindled a little bit. There's still been a lot of spring games on TV, but like I said, they've been on demand. They've been on ESPN Plus or SEC Network Plus. A lot of them, it's maybe one or two games that are actually on ESPN, your Alabama, Colorado a couple years ago, but it's just kind of cut back on the coverage, and that's how the coaches want it. So I've always thought a little bit about this. What could we do? How could we save spring games? Because I always liked them, and as fans, I think it's a fun time to be able to go to a game that's a little less pressure. It's not as crowded. So how do we save spring games? Well, my idea had to do with how do we also save college football programs and schedules? One of the criticisms of college football, particularly the SEC, is the scheduling of FCS games. These games that you pay these smaller schools to come play you and essentially get your teeth kicked in. And, Mark Richt used to always argue that they played those games to help support those smaller schools because those smaller schools use that money to pay for their football team for the year. So how could we still have FCS games, but get them out of the regular season? Well, what if we move those to the spring? What if teams could play FCS schools as spring games? And the rules would be that you couldn't play another FBS team. You had to play somebody from a lower division. There would be no pressure. You could sell tickets. You could put it on TV. You could share revenue with the school that came. You could play backups. You wouldn't be under pressure to win if you lost. Oh, it's an exhibition. It's not a mark on your program at all. You're playing a bunch of walk-ons, whatever. I thought that could be a fun way that they could keep spring games around and make them a little more competitive as well, because spring games essentially were just scrimmages. It was the last scrimmage of the year, but you've been practicing against these same guys. What do you really know? Like, you're not going to show anything. You're running trick plays. The games are always low. At least the Georgia ones are always low scoring until like the end, and then the fourth quarter happens and they score a bunch of points. But then today there was an article that Deion Sanders is actually thinking somewhat similar in the vein that I am, though his was slightly different. His thought was to treat spring games more similar to how the NFL does exhibition games in the summertime, where they work with another school to schedule a series of practices. So that team comes in, they have a couple of practices, and then they have a game at the end. And so Deion had kind of thrown this idea out, and Fran Brown, coach of Syracuse, immediately stepped up on the internet and was like, "We'll come, we'll do it." So it looks like right now they're trying to figure it out. They have to get it passed through the NCAA, because right now that's not allowed. Their spring game is scheduled to be on ESPN, and Deion is trying to push for this. Like, he wants it to happen this year. He's like, if we can get something, I think it's April 12th is their spring game. So if he can make it happen, he's going to. It'll be interesting to see what happens and see if other teams want to do that, because at least that is like some practices in a game against people not on your own team. And there's not pressure to win. It's practice, but it's a little bit better. You can sell tickets. You can get your fans excited. So I think that would be a viable option as well.
I wonder if the players would maintain some level of order, though, because in those NFL practices, those teams are always getting in fights like every day.
They are, but the thing you got to remember about that is those are NFL practices that happen in the summer. The teams are much larger than what they end up being. Those are guys trying to make a team. So you're out there, a lot of times you're a backup offensive lineman. You're trying to make a team, so you're trying to make a play. You might get a little aggressive. It pisses somebody off. In these situations, these are college kids. And as part of this change with revenue sharing, they're going to change the roster size. So things like walk-ons are probably going to go away in D1 eventually. It's just going to be, a 105-person roster. So you're not going to have guys worried about necessarily losing their jobs in practice. But
yeah, but you get a bunch of teenagers out there getting angry.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it certainly could be a disaster. It certainly could. but I think it would be fun. And
Yeah.
if you did do it like that, it would be real teams. So you could sell it more like a game. You could sell it
Yeah.
on TV. You could certainly get
I like
TV
the
eyes on it.
idea. I like the idea of having a game. Yeah, because you do this in high school football. You know, you have your what used to be called jubilees, where you'd play like 4 teams in a night, and
Yeah.
they were all just glorified scrimmages. So something like that, but maybe not with 4 teams.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. It's sad to me if spring games go away, because I really liked them, and I feel like this just kind of all came out of nowhere. So I probably should have seen it coming, but I just didn't.
Yeah,
I don't know. So
I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. Like, I totally get where Kirby's coming from and where these coaches are coming from.
Yeah.
You have spent all this time and money and effort to get these kids on your roster, and then as soon as spring's over, if they're not happy with their place on the depth chart, I'm out.
yeah, very true. So up next, and for the remaining next few weeks, we're going to have a question of the week every week that either I present to Burl or Burl presents to me, and to give our thoughts. So our first question, I'm going to be giving this question to Burl, that I saw the other day. It's very interesting. So Georgia football has won 32 consecutive home games. That is the longest consecutive home winning streak in the country. That's 12 more than any other team in the country. The all-time record for consecutive home wins is 58. Now, Georgia has a real tough home schedule in 2025, with Ole Miss, Texas, and Alabama all coming into town. Do you think that after the 2025 season, will Georgia still have the current record for the longest home winning streak?
The odds are certainly not in Georgia's favor. That is for sure. But I think there's a good chance that they can keep that streak going, because we know we can beat Texas. Prove that last year with not our best team. I'm going to assume that we're going to be better this year. I think we can beat Texas. I think Alabama is a much more winnable game than it has been in the past, especially after last year. I think the Nick Saban, I don't know, aura is slowly wearing off, and you saw that at the end of the season last year with Alabama, with some bad losses and just some uncharacteristic actions that was happening on the field that you normally wouldn't see on a Nick Saban ran team. So I think that's a much more winnable game. Georgia fans are going to be up, hype. Georgia fans always show up, and the atmosphere at Sanford Stadium is going to be so ridiculous that alone might pull the team through.
Yeah, I think if they beat Alabama at home next year, I don't think there's any way they lose to Texas. I think they will have all the confidence in the world. They may lose games next year, but I think the Alabama is key. The Alabama game is the key to the season, at least at home next year.
Yeah, so 2 tough turnarounds. So right after Bama, you have Kentucky. Kentucky always plays Georgia close. Although whenever Georgia plays Kentucky at home, it seems like we've been able to handle them pretty well. But then Georgia goes to Auburn, and then the next week has to play Ole Miss. That would be the game that I could see us potentially dropping. Like out of those big 3, I think Ole Miss is probably the one that I would circle as that's the one that we got to watch out for.
Yeah. I mean, look at it this way. If Georgia somehow gets to that Texas game still undefeated at home, at that point, they'll have already beaten Bama and Ole Miss at home. You're probably looking at no more than, because that's like what? That's like the second or third last game of the season, right? So,
yeah, third.
Yeah. So you're probably looking at, let's say worst case scenario, you're 8-2 at that point. And we know, obviously, in this new playoff world, that means you're still alive for the playoffs. So I think the key is to get to there, get through Alabama, get yourself the confidence with this younger team, and the sky could be the limit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but if we beat Bama and Ole Miss, I see us as being undefeated at that point in the season.
Absolutely. I mean, we absolutely could be. It's just remember that it's a lot harder to win on the road in the SEC than it is to win at home.
Yeah, that Auburn game really worries me.
The Auburn game
and Tennessee.
The Auburn game, Tennessee, because they return an experienced quarterback, and Florida could be scary this year, depending on the development of Lagway, the confidence that they had at the end of the year last year. That could be an interesting one too.
Yeah, I feel better about the Georgia Tech game because since it's in Atlanta, it's a home game.
And it's at Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah.
It's not even at Tech. So
there's always more Georgia fans at that game.
Yeah, but now there'll be 65,000 Georgia fans.
Yeah, it's a much better atmosphere when that game is played in Atlanta than Athens. It just always is.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some tough matchups next year. But as far as do I think Georgia can keep the streak alive? Yes.
All right. Well, we will bookmark this, and come the end of next year, we'll bring this clip back up and we'll see how you did, bro.
Yep. And if I'm wrong, you'd be like, look at this dummy. This homer. Yeah, so what? I am. Go Dogs. Oh, man. What do you think of John Cena's heel turn?
I thought it was awesome. 20-something years of being the good guy in wrestling and turning bad guy on our boy Cody Rhodes. It was executed fantastic. I don't think they could have done it much better. And last night he came out, he had his first promo as a heel. He ran down the fans. He said, you never supported me, so I'm giving nothing to you. I'm breaking up with you. And I loved it. The best part of the whole thing was he was railing on the fans, and then they turned to this kid, and there's this kid fully decked out in the John Cena gear and the hat. Just looked like
new John Cena gear and a hat.
It looked like somebody had just killed his dog.
It was the same gear that John Cena was wearing in the ring.
Yeah, it was great. It was awesome.
Oh man. Yeah, I thought it was fun. I still wish it wasn't a "You People" promo, but I mean I get it. It whatever. Yes. I just don't. I think it's just I don't know, just worn out premise.
Yeah. So Burl, speaking of heel turns, what do you think is the biggest heel turn in the history of college football?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. We've had some teams that had some people that did some really bad things. We also had some coaches go places that really made me, question, really just not like that team at all. So, in my opinion, I think the biggest heel turn is Urban Meyer coming out of retirement and going to Ohio State. Because before then, I had no problem with Ohio State. I was, hey, they wear red, cool, go Ohio State. As soon as Urban Meyer went there, I was like, you son of a bitch.
I think one recent one that I think of is Caleb Williams. When he was at Oklahoma, he was, this freshman, and he was in this Lincoln Riley offense, and they were great. And then Lincoln Riley takes the job at USC, and immediately Caleb Williams goes, and they start taking players, and left Oklahoma, kind of decimated their roster. And once he got there to USC, he won the Heisman, but he was kind of a jerk about it, and he was kind of a prima donna and everything. He painted his nails up and didn't really take good criticism and all that. So I think Caleb Williams is one that I would certainly point to. Let's see who else.
Yeah, on that similar vein, Urban Meyer kind of did the same thing when he left Florida. He left that cupboard freaking bare, which
Yeah,
awesome. Thank you for that.
yeah. Well, that's because the players that were there under him, other than Mr. Tebow, were not so saintly. So,
Oh my goodness. That was a clear example of showing the balance in the force.
right.
Because most of that team was really, really bad, dark side. But then you had Tebow. He just balanced the scales there.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Next week, we'll be back next week. We're going to talk a little bit about 5 teams that we think may bounce back in 2025. We'll also talk a little bit more about the house settlement as it relates to NIL and how that's going to shape out with colleges and players and everything in the coming years, really, but immediately next year. So until then, I'm Street.
I'm Burl.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.